Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our channel, AI Era Islamic Abrahamic Wisdom. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating from Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir's book, The Foundation of Islamic Jurisprudence. We're looking at Volume 1, Sub-Volume 2, which focuses entirely on the constitutional decisions of Hazrat Abu Bakr As-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him.
So, how is that even possible? I mean, think about it. How could a leader, in just 2 short years, lay down a global diplomatic constitution that would go on to shape governance for centuries? It's a huge question, and that's exactly what we're going to explore today. We're going to unpack the incredible decisions made by Abu Bakr As-Siddiq and see how he laid the groundwork for a system of international relations that, believe it or not, still echoes in our world.
Right, so you have to think of it like this. Abu Bakr wasn't just putting out fires or reacting to crises as they came up. No, he was more like an architect. He was deliberately building a lasting structure for a global community. Every single decision he made, it was like a carefully chosen brick in this grand blueprint, a framework for justice, for ethics, and for diplomacy on a scale the world had honestly never seen before.
Just 2 years. That's it. That is all the time he had. Can you even imagine the pressure? There was absolutely no room for trial and error. The foundation he was laying had to be pretty much flawless, and it had to be crystal clear from day one. And you know, that's what makes the principles he established so incredible.
Okay, so here's the first big challenge he faced. How do you build a global community without just steamrolling local cultures? It's a tough one, right? Well, the solution was nothing short of revolutionary. It was a whole new approach to law and governance, a concept that we can call the principle of adaptation. And this is where things get really smart. Instead of just forcing a rigid one-size-fits-all legal code on everybody, the approach was all about adaptation. It was this amazing recognition that, hey, justice can look different in different cultures. The goal was to blend Islamic principles with local customs, as long as, and this is key, as long as those customs didn't clash with the core ideas of fairness and justice. What you get is a masterclass in balancing core principles with real-world practicality. And you know what? This idea is more relevant today than ever before. You see nations all over the world struggling with this exact problem: how to create legal systems that are both universally just and culturally sensitive. This is literally the heart of what modern legal scholars call hybrid legal systems, this exact idea of blending global norms with local traditions.
But okay, what happens when diplomacy just doesn't work? What about when a state has to use its power? Well, Abu Bakr's blueprint had a clear, totally uncompromising answer for that too. And it came in the form of a powerful code for the ethical use of force.
And let's be clear, these weren't just friendly suggestions. They were ironclad commands. Absolute, universal, totally non-negotiable. No treachery, no torture, and an unwavering, strict protection of civilians, especially women, children, and the elderly. You see, for Abu Bakr, ethics during a conflict weren't some nice-to-have luxury. They were the very foundation of legitimate authority.
I want you to just picture this for a second. It's the 7th century. Armies are marching far from home, in an age that was, let's be honest, often defined by brutal winner-take-all warfare. And right in the middle of all that, you have this leader demanding a level of ethical conduct from his commanders that was, well, it was basically unheard of at the time.
And now, here's the mind-blowing part. Those same 1,400-year-old principles, they are the absolute bedrock of what we now call international humanitarian law. The very ideas behind the Geneva Conventions, the modern laws of armed conflict, you can trace their DNA right back to these decisions. It is a direct, unbroken line stretching from the 7th century straight into our world today.
But really, the ultimate goal was to avoid war altogether. And the blueprint laid out a super clear step-by-step process for it. Step 1, you always start with direct negotiation. If that doesn't work, step 2, you bring in a third party for arbitration. And step 3, and this is so important, any agreement had to be written down and made legally binding. No vague promises, no handshake deals. This was about building a real, lasting, documented peace.
A just peace is better than an easy victory. Just let that sink in for a moment. The whole philosophy here wasn't about conquest, just for the sake of conquest. It was about creating a world where justice and fairness could actually win. A world where a lasting, sustainable peace was always the ultimate prize.
All right, so the battle's over, the dust is settled, now what? I mean, how do you actually heal the wounds of a conflict and start building a shared future? This, my friends, is where the blueprint really truly shines, with its deep focus on mercy and just integration.
Just try to imagine for a second that you're a resident in one of these newly governed territories. What are your biggest fears? Losing your home, right? Losing your freedom, your whole way of life? Well, Abu Bakr's administration got that. They understood those fears, and they established a core principle. Victory is not a license to dominate. It is a sacred responsibility to protect and to serve.
And look, this wasn't just empty talk. This was the law. Your property, it was safe. Your freedom to practice your own religion, protected. Your cultural identity, preserved. I mean, in an era when conquest usually meant total destruction and forced assimilation, this was a completely radical alternative. It was a model for integration built on dignity and mutual respect.
Does any of that sound familiar? It absolutely should, because these are the exact same principles that are now at the heart of modern international law. The rights of occupied populations, the goals of post-conflict reconstruction, it's all right there. The language might have changed a bit over 1,400 years, but the spirit, that commitment to justice, dignity, and human rights, is identical.
So there you have it. When you put all these pieces together, what you see isn't just a random series of decisions, it's a complete, comprehensive, 1,400-year-old blueprint for a more just world. It's a system that's built on 4 incredibly powerful pillars that are just as relevant today as they were way back in the 7th century.
So let's just quickly recap. First, you've got constitutional adaptation. That's the direct ancestor of today's hybrid legal systems. Then, ethical warfare, the very seed that grew into international humanitarian law. Third, diplomatic resolution, the early model for international mediation. And finally, just integration, the foundation for how we think about post-conflict reconstruction today. 4 ancient principles, 4 modern realities. It's an amazing parallel.
And all this leaves us with a really big question. In our world today, a world that's still grappling with conflict, with injustice, with deep cultural divides, what can this timeless 1,400-year-old blueprint teach us about leadership and diplomacy? Maybe, just maybe, a lot of the answers we're searching for have been right there, all along. What do you think? Please do subscribe to our channel, and please like and share this video with your friends.
Is really the heart of our whole explainer today. It paints this picture of justice as something universal, something dynamic that can't be contained. But the big question is, how is this vision actually put into practice all those centuries ago? Well, let's find out.
So here's how we're going to break down this remarkable framework. We're going to look at it piece by piece, exploring the pillars that held up this grand vision of international justice. Okay? Let's dive right in.
So, let's start with the big picture. The core idea from our source is this. Abu Bakr As-Siddiq didn't just rule, day to day. He was an architect. He designed a system, a timeless constitutional framework for how a just state should behave on the world stage, and it was all built on clear, practical principles.
All right, so what's holding this whole structure up? What's the very first foundational pillar? It's something that feels incredibly modern, like it could be pulled from a headline today. A serious commitment to transparency in government.
Okay, get this. The source material, specifically what's referred to as Case 117, really highlights this practice. And we're not talking about just jotting down a few notes here and there. No way. This was a deliberate state policy to create an official, verifiable record of everything the state did, especially in its diplomacy. Every promise, every treaty was put down on paper.
So you might be thinking, okay, cool, they kept good records. But it was so much more than that. The crucial point here, the big lesson, is that transparency is what fuels legitimacy. Think about it. When a government operates out in the open, its own people and its allies can actually trust it and hold it accountable. This documentation was the proof, the evidence that the state would stand by its word. And that builds a foundation of legitimacy that any stable society absolutely needs.
And this is where it gets really cool, right? You can draw a straight line from that ancient practice to today. The same logic is at work in our modern world. Think about our national archives, written constitutions, or even Freedom of Information Acts that let citizens see what their government is up to. It all comes from this one core idea. Trust is built on transparency.
All right, so if transparency is the bedrock, the next pillar builds right on top of it. It's all about coordination. Because, after all, you can't really have a clear, strong presence on the world stage if different parts of your government are saying and doing completely different things.
Case 118 in our source explains exactly how Abu Bakr set up a system to prevent that kind of chaos. The goal was simple, but brilliant. Make sure that whether someone was talking to a military commander on the frontier or an envoy in a faraway capital,
They were hearing the exact same state policy. One voice, one message.
And this wasn't just a top-down order. It was this living, interconnected network. You had envoys carrying the official messages, governors putting the policy into practice in their regions, and military commanders who had to operate within very clear diplomatic and ethical rules set by the leadership. Every single part was designed to work together, projecting one unified voice to the rest of the world.
And here we go again. Look at the modern world. This is the very reason we have institutions like foreign ministries or a national security council. Their whole job is to bring everything together and make sure a country's diplomatic, economic, and military branches are all pulling in the same direction. The names have changed, but that principle of unity is as critical as ever.
Now, this next pillar is honestly one of the most fascinating parts. A system can be transparent and unified, but if it's too rigid, it's just going to break the second it faces a new challenge. So this pillar is all about being able to adapt while sticking to your principles.
So, Case 119 describes a framework that was anything but static or frozen in time. As the state grew and included all these different cultures and peoples, its government couldn't be a simple one-size-fits-all solution. The system was actually engineered to be flexible, to allow for local customs and new situations, all while holding tight to its core ethical principles, like justice and protecting people's rights.
And that is just such a profound insight. A truly strong constitution isn't one that's set in stone and never changes. Its real strength comes from its ability to adapt and evolve, to meet the needs of new generations and new challenges without ever sacrificing the fundamental values it was built on. It's designed to bend, so it never breaks.
You know, this ancient concept is pretty much the core of what we now call dynamic constitutional interpretation. It's that huge debate in modern law about how to apply principles written centuries ago to things like the internet or new social norms or global crises. The idea of a living constitution is a cornerstone of so many legal systems all over the world today.
So we have transparency, we have unity, and we have adaptability. The final pillar of this amazing blueprint looks beyond the here and now. It's all about building something that will last. In Case 120, we see an act of just incredible foresight. Abu Bakr As-Siddiq wasn't just thinking about his own rule. He was actively working to make sure the transition of power would be smooth and stable. He structured the state's long-term diplomatic and strategic plans so that his successor could step right in and continue the work without missing a beat.
And the lesson here, wow, it's such a powerful statement on what true leadership really is. It's not about your own power or making short-term gains. It's about being a steward, about building institutions and systems that will keep serving justice and stability long after you're gone. It's like planting a tree knowing you might never get to sit in its shade.
And so, when we zoom out, we can see how all the principles we've just talked about fit into this complete interlocking system. Our four main pillars: transparency, coordination, adaptability, and legacy. They're the main supports for an even broader framework that also champion things like universal ethics, using diplomacy before war, and protecting the rights of all people. It's a truly holistic vision for good governance.
The source sums it all up with this powerful reflection. The reign itself was short. Yeah, it lasted just over 2 years. But the principles that were established became the foundation for a civilization. It was a living demonstration that justice, fairness, and wise leadership weren't just for internal affairs. They were principles that should define a state's entire character on the world stage.
And that really leaves us with a final question to think about. In our own complex, globalized world, how can these ancient principles of transparency, unity, and foresight help us approach building a more just and stable future? The blueprint might be 1,400 years old, but the questions it makes us ask are more relevant now than ever. If you found this exploration as fascinating as I did, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for joining us.